Okay, we are going to work on our trig word problems. This is trig part 2, notes number 2. All right, there are two main vocabulary words that you need to be comfortable with in order to do your trig word problems. Okay, the first one is the angle of elevation, which would be the angle that you look up at something. The angle of elevation, if you think to elevate, would be to look up. So the angle of elevation is the angle you look up at something. So if this is you, and this is your eyes, the angle that you look up would be the angle of elevation. Okay? The next would be the angle of depression. And if you think depressed, you're down, you're feeling gloomy, the angle of depression would be the angle that you look down at something. Okay? So again, if this is you, here's your eye, here's your line of sight, here's like a little spider on the ground. You have to look down at the spider. All right, you're standing perpendicular to the ground. See how you and the spider and the way you look at the spider forms this right triangle? The angle of depression is outside of that right triangle. Again, it's the angle that you look down at something. And if we use past knowledge and we look at parallel lines cut by a transversal, if you think of this as the angle that you look up at something, this is the angle that you look down, you can see that these two angles are congruent because they're alternate interior angles. So we know that alternate interior angles are congruent. So what this basically means is that our angle of elevation is going to equal our angle of depression. Okay, so that will be helpful in our word problems. So again, if you think about the angle that I look down at the spider would be equal to the angle that the spider were to look up at me. So the angle of depression outside the triangle looks down, angle of elevation inside the triangle and looking up. Okay. I have some examples that I would like to go over with you. The first one, now this is going to take some writing, okay? But the first example, you have a boat, and the boat is X distance from a lighthouse. All right, so here's the water, here's the boat, here's the lighthouse. Okay? If the angle of depression from the lighthouse to the boat is 79 degrees, and the lighthouse is 27 feet tall, we want to find X. So the boat is X distance from the lighthouse. The lighthouse is 27 feet tall. And the angle of depression from the top of the lighthouse to the boat. Okay, so if you were to draw an imaginary line going straight across, the angle of depression looking down at the boat, that angle is 79 degrees. And what we just talked about is that the angle of depression and the angle of elevation is the same. So this angle would become 79 degrees. Now, to solve this, we're going to set up a trig equation. Look at your angle. You have the side opposite, and you have the side adjacent. And if you remember SOHCAHTOA, we have the opposite and the adjacent. That's tangent. Tangent of my angle equals the opposite over the adjacent. This is my trig equation. Put it over 1, cross multiply. So I have x times the tangent of 79 degrees. In this direction, I have 27 times 1. To solve for x, I'm going to divide by the tangent of 79. And I'm going to get an x value of 5 feet. So the boat is 5 feet from the base of the lighthouse. All right. Let's do an example with angle of elevation. Okay. The angle of elevation from a water spout, like a sprinkler, in the lawn to a nearby 40-foot tall tree is 41 degrees. So let's see what that looks like so far. Okay, so here on the ground, this is the ground. Here's a water spout. Let's water out, right? Here's a tree, and the tree is 41 feet tall. Okay? The angle of elevation from this water spout to the tree, so you're looking up to the tree, that angle of elevation is 41 degrees. Okay? The question is, how far would the water have to travel to hit the top of the tree? How far would the water have to travel that's coming out of this spout to hit the top of the tree? Well, the water's spraying everywhere, and we want the water to hit the top of the tree. So that means I'm looking for the hypotenuse. All right, well, you look at your angle. You have the opposite side and the hypotenuse, which is sine. So the sine of 41 degrees is going to equal the opposite, which is 41 feet, over the hypotenuse. Actually, I'm sorry, I just recognized the height was 40. My bad. All right, let's go back. Sine of the angle, opposite is 40, hypotenuse is x. Put this over 1, cross multiply. In this direction, I have x times the sine of 41. In this direction, I have 40. I have to divide by the sine of 41. Put this in my calculator, and I get that this is 61 feet. So when you are doing these problems, you need to just make sure that you are reading. If it's the angle of depression, the angle of depression is the angle you look down. It's outside of the right triangle. The angle of elevation is the angle that you look up. It's inside the right triangle.